Yeah, okay, good evening everybody. We're on Yud Zayin. This is Parashat Korach, chapter 17. And we're going to go to actually the last verse in our booklet, which is Kaf Gimel 23. It's the second to the last page. It's Taf Reish Chaf Aleph. Hey, sorry. Okay, ready to begin? So we're talking about the budding of Aaron's rod. Right? We had a whole string of discussion between Moshe and Korach, and this was like called the final say. Aaron is chosen by God, recognized. This is Yud 17. But here we are. I'll read the verse in both English and Hebrew. 23. It was the next day. Moses came to the tent of testimony, and behold, the staff of Aaron of the house of Levi had blossomed. It brought forth a blossom, sprouted a bud, and developed almonds. So we know Moses brought all the staffs, and they saw, each man took his own staff, and punishments were coming. Okay, so this budding of the staff proved that Aaron was the man. Now in Hebrew, Vayehi mimacharat, and it happened the next day. V'yavo Moshe el ohel ha'edut. Moses came into this tent of testimony. V'hinei, it's going to be an important word. We're going to discuss that. Parach mate Aaron lebeis Levi. So the word perach we're going to discuss. Here's parach. We're going to discuss that as well. It was a blossoming of the mate, of the staff of Aaron, who was from the house of Levi. The yotzei perach. So came forth a bud. The yotzei tzitz. I should say it came forth a blossom and now sprouted a bud, the yigmol shkedim, and it developed almonds. Okay, so it's a very cryptic, and we're going to discuss pretty much the entire verse in detail. And the Kli Yakar begins by saying, in Kaf Gimel, V'hinei parach mate Aaron v'chulei, right? Behold, blossomed this staff of Aaron. Remez kilo lemare inei ha'adam yishpot Hashem. This is a hint to the idea that God's judgments are not always readily visible and available for our understanding. Okay? God has his own way of making judgments, and we are only basar adam, we're human. Ki im nira echad eitz yavesh bli lichuchit mayim. The only thing that we might be able to see ourselves is a dry branch that has no visible or no liquid, no detectable moisture. It's a dry branch. That's what we could see. That's what we would be able to see, and that's what everyone placed. Similarly, Torah v'chachma, the idea of God's law, God's wisdom. Torah and chachma. Right? The Torah we know, and chachma is the wisdom. Kadosh Baruch Hu mafricho. Hashem causes that to blossom. Okay? V'chein behefach. When we think we're so smart, we have a lot to thank Hashem for, if we are smart. But certainly if we think we're smart, we should think, wow, where did my wisdom come from? Hashem is the one that causes it to blossom. Kedamasik b'yuchad b'yechesko. Right, this is what's brought down in the Midrash. Shedarish al Korach v'Aaron pasuk. In the Sefer Yechesko, that's Ezekiel 17:24, it says by God, Hoshavti eitz lach v'hiparachti eitz yavesh. I, God speaking, dried out a moist branch or piece of wood, and I caused to blossom a moist, sorry, I dried out a moist branch, and I made forth blossoms come from a dry branch. I'll read the whole verse. And all the trees of the field will know that I, Hashem, have lowered a high tree and raised a low tree. I have dried up a moist tree and made blossom a dry tree. I am Hashem. I have spoken, and I shall carry it out. Meaning mishpat, right? This is not so obvious to us, but Hashem has all, right? He has all the power, and we don't always see what He knows and how He carries it out. But trust me, He's the one. Okay? And this verse is very appropriate, and the Midrash is brought. That verse is brought down in the Midrash regarding our topic here. And he says, the Kli Yakar says, "V'yecholiyot." It's very possible, shemisham nimshach hamakor, that from there, that's where is drawn out the whole concept, the source. Shekol ma shahaya b'mikdash, that anything that was in the temple, even the tabernacle, in what we call the mikdash, anything that was there, haya malavle v'oise peiros, would blossom. It would blossom, and it would create fruit, or it would produce wonderful things. Afilu hazahav shenikra parvayim. Even the gold that was in the tabernacle, and certainly in the mikdash, it was called parvayim. And Gemara Yuman explains that it had a very deep red, like the word, like a para, as if it was blood from a cow, and it had a very deep color, and it looked like it was very valuable, and much more than it really was there. And also the word, like from the word peru or revu, like as if it multiplied. Okay, it certainly appeared very wealthy and rich gold. And now we're taking the words v'yotzei perach, right, that brought forth this dry branch, brought forth a blossom. Zehaya siman lekohanim ktanim. This was a siman, some kind of a sign, reflecting the younger kohanim. And how do we know that? Shnikru'u pirchei kahuna. And the Gemara Yuma explains that the word pirchei kahuna is referring to the younger kohanim. They're the ones who are being trained to do the job. The yatzeit tzitz, and it sprouted a bud. And the Kli Yakar explains, Zes siman lekohanim gedolim. The ones, maybe even the one Kohen Gadol, but it's in plural, so any of the Kohanim that fit this category, noyisim tzitz nezer kodesh. They wore on their forehead a special plate made out of gold that it's called a tzitz. So when the words used v'yatzeit tzitz, it's reflecting, it's talking about the Kohen Gadolim who would wear this holy plate that says holy to Hashem. V'yigmol shkedim, and we said that it developed almonds. And on what account were these almonds coming forth for? B'schut v'yaratz el toch hakahal, on the merit that Aaron ran, v'yaratz, he ran into the midst of the crowd. If we remember, there was a plague. If we look into Numbers 17:12, right, Aaron ran into the crowd. There was a plague, and it killed a lot of people, and he stopped the plague with incense. The verse says, Aaron provided atonement with the incense to stop the plague. Aaron took, as Moses had spoken, and ran into the midst of the congregation, and behold. First of all, we're talking about the fact that he ran. We're going to talk about the idea that Kohanim are zrizut, they're zrizim. They run, they're diligent in their work, they are passionate about what they do. That's a certain character trait attributed to the Kohanim, zrizim. And the other idea is it says behold. In Hebrew it's vihine. Hine, we're going to discuss that as well. Behold, the plague had begun among the people. And that's the verse reflecting the Yaratz el toch akaha. So in the skut of that, what did he do that for? Kedei laha'atzir ha'magefa, in order to stop the plague. B'schut shchanim zrizim heim, on account of the fact that the Kohanim are zariz, they're quick. Now that we said v'yigmol shkedim, developed almonds, the word like a shapdan, who's someone who's very quick. The word shaked, right, that's why we call almonds shkedim, not we, this is God's language, this is the holy tongue. These are the first trees to blossom, right? In Nisan already, we're supposed to be saying brachos on the trees, the hanal we derive from the trees, and already, because this was a leap year, already in Adar, they had begun to blossom. But in general, the almond tree is the first tree that blossoms here in Eretz Yisrael. And so the idea is, as he says here, Kigmul Yado Heshiv Lo Lahatzmiach Shkedim, as payment for his quick running out into the kahal, into the midst of the people with the incense to stop the plague, as Kohanim are zrizim to do. He merited to have this growth of the blossoms, of the shkedim, of the almonds, sheish behem mashma'ut, because in the language of shkedim, there's a language of shkidut umihirut, meaning quick, early, fast. And that's the passion that we know Kohanim have. V'zacha l'matanot, also, what did the Kohanim get? They got gifts, right? Whether it was from the korbanot, whether it was from the separation of different fruits and vegetables. So they got matanot. Now, how do we know what was given? Why were they given matanot? Partially because of this. We said the word hine. Hine is also a language of quick. If you look in chapter 18, verse 8, it discusses God's giving. This is in just a little bit further on. God says, "Vani hine natati lecha." God is saying, "I'm giving to you these gifts." We're talking about the Kohanic gifts. Here's the verse here. Hashem spoke to Aaron, and I, behold, that's the hine, I have given you the safeguard of my heave offerings, of all the sanctities of the children of Israel. I have given them to you for distinction and for your sons as an eternal portion. So this hine is lashon moira al hazrizus. It itself reflects some kind of quick decision on God's part. V'chein perish Rashi, Parshas V'yeshev, as Rashi explains on verse Lamed 37:13 in Genesis. The Yomer Hineni, this verse where God said, Yaakov said to Yosef, and Yosef responds. Yaakov asked Yosef, go find your brothers, go to the specific place near Shechem, they're pasturing their flock, go check on them. And Yosef knew that the brothers hated him. They might even want to kill him. Yet when his father said, I want you to go check up on your brothers, he says, Hineni, I'm here. Like, Hineni, I'm here I am. That means behold, right? You're standing there, like, tell me how high to jump, and you're there. So the word Hineni also is a language of anava v'zrizut. It's not just quick, but it's also a humility factor. Whatever you say, how high? You tell me, I'm there. And Rashi explains, Hine is also a language of simcha. Like when you're passionate about something and you're willing to do something as quick as possible, the psychological factor is you're probably very happy about doing it. Rashi explains that the word Hine means besimcha, that at least Yosef did what his father commanded him with simcha. But it's a general concept of Hine. Kamdat Amar, like it says, if you look in Exodus 4, verse 14, Now this verse is key. Try to remember it because we're going to use it several times in the next few minutes. Hine hu yotze likratecha v're'echa v'samach belibo. This is what God was telling Moses. Moses says, I can't talk. I have a speech impediment. First of all, choose somebody else. I'm a pretty humble guy. You know. God says, listen, you're the guy. You're going to do the good job. So you can't talk. Aaron will talk for you. Aaron, your older brother, is going to come out and meet you. He's going to greet you and meet you. And he actually is happy about it. Meaning that the older brother, your older brother, is actually happy that you have the job as the leader of the Jewish people. He's not at all upset that he wasn't chosen. He's not the firstborn, but his older brother. Miriam was the firstborn. But in this case, at least he is happy that you have such a responsibility. As the words say, Hine, behold, God is telling Moses, Hu yotze likratecha. He, Aaron, is coming out to greet you, v're'echa, and you shall see v'sameach b'libo. He is actually happy in his heart. V'tama shel davar, and the reason for the matter is, shekol hine is lashon zrizus hu. That word hine again, behold, is a language of quick, and as we spoke about, passionate. V'chol ma she'adam oseh b'zrizus, anything that a person does quickly and with intent and diligence, v'vaday hu someach ba'asiyato. Certainly he's happy about doing it. Like you can measure how, when someone's not so happy about doing something, they usually take their time. The truth is, if he just does it a little quicker, you can get over with. But that's the secret of life. Kishem she'Aaron haya sameach, just like Aaron was happy. Likrat Moshe, to greet and meet Moshe. Achiv hakatan mimenu. It's true, he was the younger brother, right? That meaning in relationship to Aaron, Moses was the younger brother, and yet Aaron was. Now, how did Moshe know that Aaron was happy? Because God told him, right? If God tells you Aaron's happy, you believe it. I'm sure he had a smile on his face too when he met him. But that's one of the ideas of a prophet and prophecy. The lo nitkane b'srarato, that Aaron was not jealous on the account that Moses had this power, had this authority. Moses was the king, and Aaron, the older brother, was, well, we don't know yet. He wasn't Cohen at the time. He was the older brother, and yet he was happy. B'schut zeh, and on account of this, right, in the merit of Aaron being happy, nitan li Aaron srarat kahuna l'mashche bo b'simcha. You have to realize that Aaron merited, Aaron benefited, Aaron was rewarded because he was happy for his younger brother and didn't make a big deal out of it. Good things come to you, right? And on account of that, God gave to Aaron this special relationship and responsibility of serving. It was a very distinct responsibility, and it was appointed, and it was done all with simcha, and accepted with simcha by Aaron. V'zeh sha'amar, now we understand God himself says, V'ani hinei natati lecha, I am giving to you, to Aaron, to the Kohanic tribe, these gifts. B'schut, and what was on which merit? Because we saw hine again, that word hine, where God predicted and said to Moses, behold, he's coming out to meet you. So we know that Aaron went out with love and passion and for no jealousy towards greeting his brother, his younger brother. Now, earlier on in our verse, it talked about in the morning it will become known, right? In the morning, what will become known? Who will be the real Kohen Gadol? We'll go and we'll inspect these sticks the next morning and we'll see. So, Baboker Yodea Hashem. In 16:5, chapter 16, verse 5, it says, in the morning Hashem will make known to us. This is what Moses requested. Perashnu, we explained, Shenatan lo Hashem hamatanos baboker, that God gave to him these gifts in the morning. And what are these gifts in the morning? We're talking about the Kohanim. The Pani Me'iros, a illuminated face, a shining face, which means brilliance and happiness. He says, Besimcha, with joy. Kamishpat el davar hanitin el hashoel kahogan. Just like the way it works. When someone requests something, right? You need a loan, or you need to borrow something, and you give it over to him. He's very happy. Then Chazal say in Gemara Shabbos, B'schut, on the merit of those words we used. You want to show him where we're at? V're'echa v'samech b'libo, that Aaron would appear to be happy. He saw, you will see, that Aaron will be happy in his heart. And what was the reward for that? In other words, in the merit of Aaron being happy in his heart, Zacha lechoshen mishpat al halev. Aaron, and we're really talking about the Kohanim, talking about the Kohen Gadol, in fact, but he would merit to wear this breastplate that had the stones and the Urim V'Tumim. He would end up wearing this breastplate of judgment on his chest, upon his heart. Lefi shenemar, if you look in Psalms 25 verse 9, Yidrech anavim b'mishpat, that we're saying he leads the humble with justice. So we're talking about God, we're talking about the Kohen Gadol. Well, he shall lead the humble with justice. So as Aaron was humble, and he leads the people with the Hoshen Mishpat, this breastplate of justice on his heart. That is the reward. Kederach shenit ba'elamala b'paras mishpati. And he said, again, the verse, V'derech zeh, this way is through humility. Shesamach al surarat achiv, that the humility of Aaron was that he was very happy for his younger brother, who ended up with a lot more authority than he did. But he was very happy for him. And on account of that, he merited to have the Choshen Mishpat. And the Chazal say in Gemara Chulin how humble Moshe and Aaron were. Gadol ma shenemar b'Moshe v'Aaron. How great these two men were, as it says, if you look in verse Exodus 16:7, v'nachnu ma, for what are we? This is what Moses says about the two of them. V'chein bi Aaron kativ, if you look in chapter 16 verse 11, v'Aaron mahu, and Aaron, what is he? This idea of ma, what? Like, what am I? What are we? That's a sign of humility, that you know you are nothing. Shu mechashev et atzmo livlima, that they considered themselves, each one considered themselves as if they were nothing. Ki'iluhu eitz yavesh, as if he was a dry piece of wood, right? A dry branch.
So both of them, both Moshe and Aaron consider themselves.
Well, one statement was made by Moses regarding both. The other statement was made by Moses regarding Aaron. So I'm not going to say that Aaron was more humble than Moses, because the Torah already says that Moses was the most humblest of all. But let's say they both were very humble. And Shehu, it's singular, that he considered himself in his heart as nothing. Okay, we can focus on Aaron, and as if he was an Eitz Yavesh, as if he himself was a dried branch, she'ein bo shum lach luchit, as if there's no life, there's no water, there's no moisture, because a branch requires, as we all know, some kind of moisture. Of course, a lot more than that. A little bit of dirt doesn't help, doesn't hurt. Al kein zacha sheperach mate Aaron hayavesh. Therefore, the merit, what did he merit? That the staff that he placed with all the other staffs, the staff of Aaron, which was dry, blossomed. Umash nosnu lo esrim v'arbayim matanos v'arba. Sorry. Umash nosnu lo esrim v'arba matanos keneged esrim v'arba svarim. So there were how many gifts? There's 24 gifts, and they parallel the 24 books of the Bible. V'amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, and in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Minayin she'ein nosni matanos l'kohen am haaretz. From where do we know that these gifts are not given to a Kohen who is not a Talmud Chacham, who's not a sage, who is not wise? We know it from this verse. If you look in Divrei Yamim, this is 2 Chronicles 31, verse 4. He told the people, this is Hezekiah telling the people, the inhabitants of Yerushalayim, to give the portions of the Kohanim and the Levites, so they can strengthen themselves in the Torah of Hashem. So those who are already involved in strengthening themselves and could use more chizuk, those are who you give the matanos to, these gifts. People who are not interested or not involving themselves with strengthening themselves in the Torah, you do not give these gifts to. Letet manat hakohanim v'haleviim laman yechesku b'toiras Hashem, in order to strengthen themselves in the law of God, into the Torah of God. And the Yilkut Manav, and it says in the Yilkut, right? I'm sorry, the Yalkut Mana Esrim Barba Matanos. So in the Midrash, it mentions the number, it counts out all 24 of these different gifts, but it divides them up. It divides them up into 12 and 12. Shtei Mesrei b'mikdash, Shtei Mesrei b'gvulin. Here we're talking about 12 can only be derived benefit and used while in the tabernacle or temple, in the mikdash area, and the other 12 are outside of the temple compound. Remez l'davar, and there's actually a hint to this in the Torah itself. And this is the most amazing thing about the Torah. Everything is there. Every letter, every word, why this word is where it is, in context, or not in context, in order, not in order, spelled correctly, spelled what we would think is incorrectly, goes against all the grammar that we know. Nevertheless, God is the great grammarian in the sky. It says, Ze yelecha mikodesh hakadoshim. If you look in Numbers 18, so that's Numbers chapter 18, we're going to look at three different verses. That's 18, 9, and 10 at first, and then we're going to go to verse 11. So when he says over here, Ze yelecha mikodesh kadoshim, so verse 9 and really 10, because it's short verses, this shall be yours for the most holy. In the most holy you shall eat it. That's what it means. Zeh, we're going to dissect that word zeh. Whatever zeh is, that's the matanot. It shall be for you in the Holy of Holies, or in this case, we're talking about the temple compound. Now the kemispar zeh. What is zeh? Zayin Hey, 7 and 5 is 12. So these 12 gifts, you will eat, or you will be restricted to benefit pleasure from them while inside the compound. Dahainu Shtei Mesrei. So Zeh, 7 and 5 is 12. Yelecha Mikodesh Kedoshim. Those you're restricted in a certain place. Dahainu Shtei Mesrei Shel Mikdash. That 12 should be in the temple compound. V'zeh, now this is verse 11, the same Zeh. Zeh, we're talking about the Matanos, Lecha Trumat Matanos Lechol Tenufas B'nai Israel. That verse says, and this shall be yours, these different wavings, I have given them to you and to your sons and to your daughters, all who are pure in your household. You can eat it at home, outside of the mikdash. You can derive benefit from them outside of the temple compound. So Zeh is another 12. Zayin and Hey, 7 plus 5. Zeh keneged shteim esrei shebigvulin. So that verse 11 is talking about the 12 different matanos that are eaten outside of the compound. Ki ein sham mikdash, where you do not have the temple or the holiness. Ulamala b'parshas naso. We didn't read this too long ago. That was Parshas Naso in chapter 6, verse 23. We explained, Yesh od avodas matana. Can you believe this? The chutzpah, right? The statement we're about to make. We have a few kohanim there. That there is such a service to God that is actually a gift. Can you imagine? I tell my worker, don't worry, whatever you do for me, you're going to get paid, beyond belief. What do you mean? You're not paying me? No, God will pay you. But there's a certain avoda, there's a certain type of a service that's actually a gift. Vehi birchat kohanim, and that is the ability for you guys, right, for the kohanim to bless the Jewish people is a gift to you. Ko tevarchu, right? The verse says it's in Numbers 6:25. Well, I'm not sure, it's around there. It says, Ko Tuvarchu. So, thusly, you shall bless them. Now, Kaf Hey is 25. We just got done saying there's 24 blessings, there's 24 gifts that you get. The 25th gift is the blessing of Birkas Kohanim, Ki Bo Yu Kaf Hey. Because within the blessing itself, there is this Kaf Hey. V'chan hi remuza b'yitur lashon hine. Now, we were discussing this idea of hine being zrizus. This is the language of, behold, I'm here, right? Let's get on with the show. Tell me how high to jump. I'm ready. Oila shishim, the word hine, which appears also in the introduction to the blessing of Birchas Kohanim, you have that word hine, and hine is two hays are 10, and the nun is 50, so you have 60. In the bracha itself, in the Birchas Kohanim, there are 60 letters. 60 letters within the bracha itself. To mispar, right? The Ola Shishim, like the number. Now there's a verse I want you to look up. It's in Shir Shirim, that's Song of Songs, chapter 3, verse 7. It says, Hine, behold, again, that Hine, the resting place of him to whom peace belongs. Right? With 60 myriads, that's 600,000, 60 myriads of Israel's mighty encircling it. So we're talking about that number 60. We're talking about the number 600,000, but in the grammatical over here, we're talking about 60 myriads, and I will open it up so we can see the whole Hebrew. That's Shir Shirim, that's Song of Songs 3 verse 7. Okay. Hine mitato shelishlomo shishim giburim soviv lo. Behold, the resting place of him, which we talk about, it's the temple, it's the mikdash. The resting place of him to whom peace belongs. At least there's two temples. There's a mikdash, there's a Yerushalayim above, it's Mukhuvan to the Yerushalayim below. Behold, the resting place of him with a capital H, to whom peace belongs, with 60 myriads of Israel's mighty encircling it. That's the Jewish people, and that's where Birchas Kohanim is also done, but it's the idea of bringing the Jewish people close to Hashem through this blessing. Harumuzim Birchas Kohanim, this idea that we just read in Song of Songs, is a hint to the blessing that the Kohanim give the Jewish people, but they them too are blessed through it. And how's that? As we discussed earlier, this idea of Hashem said that He's going to give it in the morning, He'll let you know in the morning. We said Shnatan lo Hashem hamatanos b'boker, as the gifts that God will give in the morning to whom? To at least to the Kohanim. It says b'panim me'iros. with a illuminated face, b'simcha. Here within the blessings that the Kohanim give, called Birchas Kohanim, we Ya'er Hashem panav elecha, right? Which Harvey, how would you translate that? May Hashem illuminate His countenance for you. He's illuminating His countenance for you. It's Hashem's countenance, but it's also, when the Kohanim are getting up so early, as there's zaris to do, then with a lot of passion to serve Hashem. So I'm sure that, as we say, sanity is contagious, we have to say simcha is contagious, and this is God's glory being spread onto the Kohanim, which means Hashem. We should have this come back to us, the real thing with the real name, and we should have a real contagion going on of God's glory to the Jewish people. And He reminds us again that the word hine is besimcha, especially not just simcha, but I'm going to equate it with love. Joy or happiness is, most people equate it also with love. So I just want to extend that one point, because Birchas Kohanim is done with love. Yeah, you have a question?
Here the portion that says, and Hashem will illuminate His countenance for you. Isn't that part of the same words that a parent blesses a child with on Shabbat?
Yeah. So on Friday night, the words in the Bible, right, the Birchas Kohanim, the parents use those. That's the blessing that the parents use. Correct. So you don't have to be a Kohen to bless your children. It's a good question. Why? How can anybody else who's not a Kohen bless their children using that? But I think as long as you're not intending to be a Kohen, if you're not, even if you are outside the base of Mikdash, it's just a minhag. It's not the actual fulfillment of that mitzvah.
Right. It's not necessarily a Kohanim or a Kohen's blessing for a parent to bless.
It's not restricted to use those words, provided you're not stepping up, acting as a Kohen if you're not. I think that's the main. All right, have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you.